Okay, it's from today's story is the Sleeping Prince, and it's from Osborne's Forgotten Fairy Tales of Brave and Brilliant Princesses. Long, long ago, there was a princess who was very, very bored. As the daughter of the king and queen, she wasn't allowed to go fishing for sharks, or climb tall trees, or even get her dress crumpled. Instead, she had to sit and watch everyone from her balcony. To keep cheerful, the princess liked to imagine herself going on thrilling adventures in faraway places. She sent herself to jungle-choked islands packed with mysterious temples. She trekked across icy wastes in search of a dragon's treasure. In time, she became an excellent storyteller, although no one else ever heard her stories. One day, she was up in a usual spot, lost in one of her daydreams, when she heard a sweet song. Down below her, some children were skipping with a rope and singing. The prince, he sleeps in a small wake until midsummer evening. The princess was curious. She had never heard the song before. "What is that song you are singing?" she called down to them. It's from a bedtime story my mother told me, Your Majesty," replied one of the girls, a little nervously. "Tell it to me," ordered the princess. "My mother says that in a faraway castle, a bewitched prince passes the whole year asleep. He only wakes up for 1 hour on the evening of the Midsummer Festival. Then he falls asleep again until the following year. They say he will remain this way until he wakes to find the princess at his bedside." "I'm a princess," thought the princess. "I could save him." "How far away is this castle?" she asked, trying to keep the eagerness out of her voice. "I don't know, but my mother said that to arrive there you would have to." The girl hesitated. "Break some iron boots?" she shrugged. That always sounded rather crazy to me. The princess wasn't daunted by these strange directions. That very day, she ordered the palace cobbler to craft a pair of iron boots in her size. She asked that they be hard-wearing but stylish. The cobbler set to work at once. As soon as the boots were finished, the princess crept out of the castle and put them on. She climbed and climbed toward the setting sun, even though she was wearing 3 pairs of socks. Her new boots were very heavy and chapped terribly. Soon her feet were covered in blisters. But the princess did not stop, not even when she came to a magic forest that no man dared to enter. "It's lucky I'm not a man," said the princess, when a goat herd tried to warn her about the forest dangers. After walking some time, she came to a fragrant flower-filled clearing. A friendly old lady was picking herbs nearby. "Where are you heading?" asked the lady. "I'm going in search of a sleeping prince who never wakes up except on midsummer evening," the princess replied. "Do you happen to know where his castle is?" "I have no idea, I'm afraid," the old lady shook her head. "But my son, the sun, might know." "The sun?" said the princess, a little alarmed. Yes, the actual sun." The old lady sounded impatient, as if she'd had to explain this before. He's a very bright lad, but also very grumpy. And there's a problem. You see, he likes to eat people." The princess was as brave as she was determined. She insisted on going back to the old lady's house, despite the danger. Before the sun arrived home, she hid herself inside a rather dusty red room. Peering through the keyhole, she watched the sun arrive. He was a giant, and he shone so brightly that it was impossible to see his face. His clothes almost seemed to be on fire. Suddenly, the sun cried out and began to take great snorting sniffs through his nose. "I smell human flesh," he shouted, blazing with light. "I want to eat it." "Simmer down, you silly boy," said the old lady. "I want to ask you a question. In the forest, I met a young girl. She's looking for the castle of the prince who is always asleep. Do you know where it is?" "I've never heard of it or him," roared the sun. "No doubt, my sisters, the stars might have an idea. Ask them." With that, he gave an enormous yawn and strode off to bed. Exhausted by her journey, the princess fell asleep too right there in her wardrobe. She dreamed deep until her ravenous hunger and a savage quick in her neck woke her up just before dawn. Soon, the sun went out to start the morning. The old lady prepared the princess a delicious breakfast of fresh eggs and porridge. She gobbled it up as the Star Sisters returned, one by one, from a long night's twinkling. They were very tired too. One by one, the princess asked them her question, but none of the stars had heard of the sleeping prince or his castle. Maybe the wind will be the one to ask, chimed the last of the stars. He's always rushing everywhere, getting into every nook and cranny, and he's always on the move. I'm sure if anyone knows, he would. Carrying a small picnic that the old lady insisted she take, the princess set out once again in her iron boots. She climbed along through the ancient forests, passing beneath mighty trees whose topmost and cransted branches soared higher than the cathedrals. Strange flowers glittered in their shadows, and strange birds tweeted from the bushes. The princess refused to be distracted by this incredible sight. Grimly ignoring her blisters, she clanged on. How long will it take me to wear out these boots, she wondered. They seemed very steady. The princess ate her lunch on a sand-dappled rock that overlooked a murmuring stream. Shortly after, she met another old woman. Where are you headed in such stylish iron boots? Asked the old woman. I'm going in search of the sleeping prince, who never wakes up except on midsummer evening. The princess replied. Do you happen to know where his castle is? The old woman thought for a moment. No, I don't. I don't know the place, but maybe my son, the wind, will have some idea. Only I'm afraid that he'll blow you away if he sees you. He's very grumpy, and he also likes to eat people, she added as an afterthought. The princess was as determined as she was practical. Naturally, she insisted on going back to the old lady's house. Before the wind arrived home, she once again hid herself in the wardrobe, but this time she remembered to take a pillow in with her, so it was more comfortable than before. Peering through a crack in the door, she watched as the wind burst in with a roar. I smell human flesh, she bellowed, sniffing and snuffling at the air. I want to eat it. Pipe down, you silly boy, said the old lady, and answer this question. In the forest, I met a nice girl with a fantastic eye for footwear. She was looking for the castle of the prince who is always asleep. Do you know where it is? Ha, that's easy, hooted the wind. She simply has to go out of this house by the back door and keep walking. She'll find it if she wants it enough. Now where's my dinner? The old lady served him with a chilled pear soup, a whole roll of cheese and a cauldron of gooseberries. The wind sucked it all down with a great gusto. Sitting comfortably in her wardrobe, the princess patiently waited for the wind to leave, which soon he did. Thanking his mother, she followed the wind's instructions and left the house by the back door. After clamping for some way, she came to a towering thicket of horns. The spines were as long and sharp as carving knives. I won't go back, muttered the princess fiercely. So onwards. The princess was as practical as she was clever. She waded straight into the thicket, crushing the thorns with her trusty iron boots. She made quick progress, but was surprised suddenly to feel the soft crumble of bare earth through her socks. Looking down, she realized that her iron boots had completely worn away on the savage thorns. Looking up again, she saw a magnificent castle. It appeared out of nowhere, right in front of her, and all the thorns had vanished away. Beyond it, the ocean sparkled. Waves crashed on the cliffs far below. The castle's wide doors gaped open invitingly. The princess padded inside her socks. She found the castle richly furnished, but almost empty. The only person she met was a solemn maid, who silently showed her to the prince's bedroom door and left her there. The prince was lying in a large, comfortable bed. He was younger than the princess had imagined, about her own age with a kind face. He was also fast asleep. The princess sat down at his bedside to wait outside. She could hear voices calling in the little fishing village just beyond the castle walls, and the shrieking of seagulls over the cliffs. Inside, in the dim light that crept through the curtains, she listened to the ticking of the clock and the prince's soft breathing. The princess realized with a sigh that she was stuck inside the castle once again. So she did what she always did. She began to tell a story to pass the time. The long hours of waiting bled into each other as her story took shape. She imagined that she and the prince were setting off on a grand adventure. She was surprised by just how quickly time passed. That evening and every evening, the maid brought her food to eat and water to drink. Each morning, she took up her story again, and the next day and the next. Days passed and the prince nosed on. Meanwhile, the princess's story blossomed. Together they climbed volcanoes and dived deep into sunken cities. Together they crossed storm-tossed seas and trackless dusty deserts. Together they found a fabulous treasure, ferocious monsters and forbidden secrets. Weeks and months passed by. Seasons came and went. The princess never left the prince's bedside. She always watched his face, hoping for some small sign that he heard a story. But he never stirred or twitched a lip. He didn't even smile. But slowly, a strange thing was happening. Little by little, the princess began to feel that she knew what the prince was going to say and want to do. She knew that he was brave, but maybe a little rash. She knew that he liked dogs, swimming by moonlight, and cheese and pickle sandwiches. Slowly, little by little, the princess grew to love the silent prince. Finally, one day she heard sweet music and a cackle of fireworks outside. The village and the castle were celebrating the midsummer festival at last. But the princess had been telling her story for so long, she had no idea that the day she had so long awaited had finally arrived. "Why don't you go out onto the balcony and listen?" suggested the maid, who just came in with the evening meal. The princess was worried that the prince might wake up and not find her by his side, but she loved music very much, so she leaned over the balcony to hear the first music she had heard in many months. "How beautiful it is," she murmured. At that moment, the prince opened his eyes. The first person he saw was the maid. Of course, he assumed she must be the storyteller who had so enchanted his dreams. "Are you the princess who has woken me from the enchantment?" she asked. "Yes, I am," said the maid, seizing her chance, and who could blame her? "No," cried the princess, rushing back in. "I'm the princess." The prince had been asleep for a year and was still feeling a little groggy. "Here's a pretty puzzle," he muttered, looking from one girl to the other. "You can't both be the princess." Then he smiled. "I know. Answer me this. What was the name of the old hermit crab with a stinky breath who lived at the bottom of the sea?" "I don't know," said the maid. "What a very strange question." "His name was Kermit," said the princess with a huge grin. "I love that part of your story," said the prince. "He was an extremely silly crab." "You heard it all?" asked the princess, walking over to the bed. "I dreamed every word." The prince took her hand and looked into her eyes. "Thank you for breaking the curse, but thank you even more for your story." They were both far too happy to be angry with the maid. "Do you remember the time we singed the warlock's beard with a red hood toasting a fork?" asked the prince. "I thought that was a really clever idea." The princess and the prince discussed the story long into the night and over the following days. Soon, they sent out invitations to their wedding. The princess's parents, who had been worried sick, were delighted to hear that she was safe. She's even found herself a suitable husband too, roared the king, after he opened her letter at breakfast. I told you we needn't have worried. You said no such thing, replied the queen. The whole kingdom was invited to their wedding, along with the sun and the stars and the wind and their mothers. The castle, which had been silent for so long, was filled with music and happy laughter, and the rich smell of feasting. Once they were married, the princess and the prince continued to tell their story. Each evening, after a hard day's reading side by side, they sat together on a high balcony, looking out over the cliffs and waves. While they ate their supper, they took turns telling the story, weaving tales around tales, creating a pattern as fine and intricate as the stars that shone in the sky. Once children arrived, these tales became their bedtime stories. As soon as they were old enough to join in, they added their own threads to the weave, which grew richer every day in the telling. And even after the princess and the prince had been married for many years, they were still very much in love, for he had imagined her while dreaming, and she had dreamed of him while she was awake.
The end of your long story. You've done so well. So if you just tune in, this is Simpa 95.5 FM, and the story is The Sleeping Prince. ZA, so what is the moral behind this story? Can you tell us?
We should always be determined.
We should always be determined. Did you also learn any lesson from the story? Yes,
you don't have to be great, determined is really.
Okay, Josephina, you wanted to say something? Yes? No, you go ahead.
We must not lose hope until we reach our goal.
Exactly. And then, Elena, yes, you were not concentrating, right?
We must not fear.
You must not fear anymore. Yes?
You should be fashionable like the princess.
You should be
fashionable.
Fashionable. Okay, Josephina.
We should be strong.
We should be strong. Yes. As young adults, yeah? We should have a focus. Is that alright? Is that alright, Helena? Yes?
We should focus on what we are doing.
We should focus on what we are doing. You look absent-minded. What's wrong with you? Yes? Helena? Huh? Okay. Pastor Lee? Yes? You loud can wait. Broad.
Yes. Person. Connotation or things that cause or annoying someone.
That annoys someone.
Or
Okay.
somebody.
Okay. And then what else?
Icing, very cold or covered with ice.
What again? What was?
Treasure.
Yes.
Collection of gold, silver and jewels.
And then any more words?
Balcony.
Balcony. Yes.
Part of a story overlooking the building.
Overlooking the building. You go to the balcony and watch the mountains. Yes.
Balcony.
Yes.
Platform built onto the outside of a building with a wall or rail outside it.
Exactly. Exactly. Yes. Yes. Any more?
Bored.
Bored.
To feel tired and uninterested, especially when you're occupied
And down. So bored. Yes. Any more? What?
Sharing.
Spell for me.
Thrilling.
Friendly.
Strong feeling or excitement or pressure.
Okay, good. Any more? We have few minutes.
Choked.
Choked.
unable to breathe.
Unable to breathe. Sometimes you can be shocked by words. Do you know that? I can be shocked by her presence. You know that? Yes.
Yeah. Giant.
Giant. Who's a giant?
Very strong person.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, so we've come to yes. Any more? Do you want to do dedications and say hi to your friends who are listening to you quickly, and then we check out. Our time is almost done. Yes.
I want to greet my friends, my classmates, and also wish all the contestants in the spelling bee competition tomorrow good luck.
Okay, thank you. Yes, what else? Who else?
I want to wish my parents and my sister and my
Mention their names.
just my parents, Mr. and Mrs. Cynthia,
Yes.
my sister Josephine Insia, and my friends Frida Arebi and Rosalind Queen.
Okay, yes.
I want to greet my headmistress, Madam Ekwe Sisi.
Yes. Okay.
I want to greet my friends Naomi Kujo and Cecilia.
All right, Selena.
I want to greet my auntie in Accra, Veronica Bediako.
Okay, so thank you so very much for coming. Next week we have another episode for this program, Youth Paradise. On the 29th of May, we're going to have Elena to be the host of this program. So stay tuned, never flip your dial. It's a simple 95.5 FM. We thank you all listeners. Up next is Ifutu Parliament.